minutes left. The Lakers have two. Bryant to shot. A chance to send the Thunder home. Lillard, long range three.
Yo, what's going on, man? What's going on? This is like back in the day. So welcome to 48 Minutes Network. I'm your host this evening, which is, it's been a while since I've been in the host chair, but I'm Ben Brown, and of course, I'm with my brother, my ace, my number one, Joshua Odellis Ferrellis Montellus Overzealous Hayes. What's good, my brother?
Nothing, man. When I found out it was just going to be the two of us, I was like, time to chop it up.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it, man. Yeah, it's always cool when the four of us are able to ride together, but when me and Josh get together, it's we can really chop it up and get it going. So the first thing though, we got to talk about this LeBron news. You know what I mean? Just had a report come out that they're saying that LeBron could miss several weeks with this foot injury. We had just talked about this before we got on. We just were texting about it, how well the Lakers had looked these first couple of games after the All-Star break, before the All-Star break, getting these new pieces. Your Jared Vanderbilts, Austin Reeves comes back from an injury. They're starting to play well. Anthony Davis is playing like Anthony Davis. And then you get the news that LeBron is going to be down, they say, several weeks. I know when going into the All-Star break, he had even mentioned that this is the most important stretch of games in his career, and now he's going to be sidelined with an injury. Josh, this is huge. I mean, of course, for Lakers Nation and for the NBA. So what are your thoughts on hearing this news? I mean, it just broke like an hour ago.
So last week, we did our full court heave. Mine was that the Lakers were going to sneak in and knock the Utah Jazz out for a spot in the playoffs. And obviously I was not thinking that LeBron was going to be hurt. And here's the thing that worries me is when you put the word several in front of weeks and you don't give a timetable, like that tells me that this thing could go a really long time. I think the early indication is this may be like a 3-week injury, something they want to make sure he gets rest. But I'm starting to get a little worried that it may be more than that. And if I'm looking at their schedule properly, they have 21 games left, and there's a chance that he could miss all of those.
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy short stretch of games before they get to the playing games and playoffs. But like we always talk about with the West, it's really crazy because they are out of the playoff games. However, they're literally 3 games out of 5th place. So depending on this stretch, I mean, they could still make the playoffs. Now, granted, LeBron is a huge piece, but fortunately for them, Anthony Davis has stayed somewhat healthy, and he's starting to play like Anthony Davis. These other pieces that they've picked up, I know D'Angelo Russell's been out the last couple games, but with Russell, Austin Reeves coming back,
Jared
Vanderbilt was a monster.
Balling.
Yeah, he's been a monster. So if they continue to get production like that, Dennis Schroeder's played well. They still have a shot because the West is so crazy, and it's still so wide open, even though it looks terrible as far as record-wise and as far as where they are in the pecking order as far as the playoffs right now. But like I said, they could go on a stretch and go on a run and be right in fifth place because they're only 3.5 games out of fifth place. So you just never know how that's going to go.
Well, here's the problem. Tomorrow at Memphis.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your first game without LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go at Thunder, who's already beat you with LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Timberwolves, that's a home game. Warriors, it's a home game. Then you go Grizzlies, Raptors, Knicks, Pelicans. And then you have a couple easy games with the Rockets. The Magic aren't really no slouch. Then you go Mavericks, Suns, Thunder. Like their next, 12 to 15 games, like they could potentially either make or break their season with this stretch that they got, especially when they got to play teams like the Thunder, who they're in contention with, is fighting for these playoff spots, right?
Yep. Yep.
The Timberwolves, they're fighting for a playoff spot. The Pelicans is fighting for a playoff spot. The Suns are in the playoffs right now, but they're still, trying to see where they are, and they should be getting KD back. I think they're targeting Wednesday is when KD's going to play. So we'll see what that looks like. But like all these teams that they're about to start playing are all fighting for those spots right there in that, 6, 7, 8 range, I guess you could talk about. Yeah, so Minnesota's in the 9, New Orleans is in the 10, Dallas is in the 6, Golden State's in the 7, and then OKC and the Lakers are right there basically with the same record. So there's a lot that could happen. And like we said, we talked, man. I mean, from the 13th spot all the way down to the 7th spot, really the 6th spot. I mean, you're talking 3 games.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's no joke.
Counts at this moment. Every game matters.
Yeah, and I think that's why LeBron made that statement. Now, I mean, I think that's a little bit crazy. I think he's had longer stretches of more important games, but in the here and now, I mean, he's exactly right. I mean, if he's trying to make the playoffs and they're trying to make a run, and they know how close the West is, like it really is 21 of the most important games that they're going to play if they want to make the playoffs, because the West is so tight outside of Denver, blowing everybody out. And you'll have Phoenix up there. I mean, they'll be separated once they get Kevin Durant, which, I mean, everybody in the world is interested to see how that's going to look. When you put, Durant, Booker, Chris Paul on the floor together. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, you mentioned their schedule and that stretch of games that they've got. I mean, they don't have too many cupcakes in there. I mean, those are all must-win games because all of those teams are fighting for playoff positions. So that you're in playoff mode pretty much for the next 21 games, and now you're in playoff mode the next 21 games without LeBron James, who's arguably having one of his best seasons, which is crazy in year 20.
Yeah, and if they can get to the back half of that schedule and LeBron can get back, they go Rockets, Jazz, Clippers, Lakers, or Clippers, Suns. So, again, I think they've came out of this stretch since that trade. They're 4-1 since the trade.
Yeah.
So, they're already starting to make some ground. They're 3 games under 500. And I think they were really primed to hit that stretch to say, hey, we're playing good right now. We got all the pieces there. Everybody's healthy. We got some guys now that are some great role players. We're 9, 10 guys deep. And the crazy part is, and maybe this is why I'm not a GM, is that a guy that was giving you big minutes and big time scoring in the beginning of the season, like isn't even touching the floor right now with Lonnie Walker. So, I don't know personally what that's about. I don't know if there's some type of injury or if he's, in the doghouse for something, but like he's barely touched the floor since this trade, and he's been coming in at like garbage minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been crazy to see what they've been like and how it's looked. So it'll be interesting to see how this West shakes out. And now you're adding Kevin Durant to the mix, and and all these other different aspects are going on. But speaking of the West, you know what time it is, Josh. You know what time it is.
It was that time last night.
Dame time. Listen. I get up early for work, so West Coast games for me are pretty late. But you sent out a text last night. You were like, Dame's got 41 at halftime. And I was like, ooh. I was like, I'll be interested to see how that works out when I get up. So we all know Damian Lillard scored 71 points last night on the Houston Rockets. An incredible. I mean, it was incredible to see some of the clips, some of the shots he made, some of the things that he was able to do. I mean, it was incredible to watch. It reminded me a lot of the Donovan Mitchell 71, where he was getting to his spots on the floor. He was in attack mode. He was doing all the things that Damian Lillard can do, and hitting buckets all over. I believe he hit 13 threes. Is that what I saw?
Yes.
He was like 13 of 22 from three, and finished with 71. We all know the greatness of Damian Lillard. We all know what he's able to do, and we all know that he's able to get hot and hit shots. But Josh, what to you? And I know that I know you watched it. What to you?
So before you say that, I was trying to go to bed, and I just had the Warriors game on in the background.
Yeah.
And the Suns and the Clippers were about to start playing. And I just was kind of listening, and all of a sudden they started talking about Dame at halftime, and I was like, what? And that's when I sent that text out. But the difference for me is, and I know some people are going to say this is crazy, but like Dame did his in regulation where Mitchell had to have an overtime to get his 71.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
Two, to shoot that many three-pointers.
22. He got 22 of them.
And to make as many as he did.
Yeah.
So he shot basically 60% from the floor, 60% from three-point range.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think he was 14 of 14 from the line, 6 dimes, 6 rebounds. Yeah. And it was like a flashback when they started showing the highlights. Like he was like old Dame, where he was like, oh, you're not going to guard me? All right, splash. Then he was getting to the rim. He dunked on somebody. I was like, oh, snap. I was
yeah.
So then it was like, he had a certain amount. He was like in his 50s. And I said, I think he's going to go for the 71 and get the high score for the season. And it wasn't like the game was out of reach. Like the Trailblazers pretty much needed all those points. The game was kind of teetering, like fairly close. But man, to watch these guys do what they do at this level and to score that efficiently, it's not even the fact that he's getting 71. Like we all remember when Kobe got 60 in his last game and he jacked up, whatever it was, like 50 shots and only made like 20 something, you know what I'm saying? Like didn't shoot 50%. Like these guys are doing this at a high efficiency level. When you're shooting 59, 60% and getting 70, like that's a whole different ball game, man.
Oh, absolutely.
That's nuts.
Absolutely. And here's the crazy part about all this is that he is 6th all time in 50-point games. 6th. Damian Lillard has 15 50 or more point games, and that's 6th all time in NBA history. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, of course, Wilt. I don't know the number, but Wilt had like it was like 30 some odd. I mean, he's well above. He's above everybody else.
Yeah, so Wilt's at 118. Now, I just want you to think about the names. I just want you to think about the names that are ahead of Damian Lillard on this list. So at number 5, you have Elgin Baylor, who has 17. Dame can probably catch him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next is James Harden at 23. But we all know the James Harden in Houston, man, was like arcade video game James Harden. And then it goes Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain.
Craziness. craziness
That's
to be
nuts,
on
man.
that list. That's nuts. That's a lot of points. I mean, that's incredible. Here's my thing, Josh, and I know this is going to go off on a tangent, but do you, in your opinion, do you feel like, and I know a lot of people have a different opinion about this, and even Damian Lillard came out and said stuff about it, but do you feel like he's wasting his time and talent out there?
So I'm torn on this because there's been some really, really, really good players who have never won a championship,
Mm-hmm.
right? But a lot of those guys that have never won a championship have at least played in an NBA Finals,
Right.
you know. So Elgin Baylor never won a championship. Malone and Stockton, Barkley,
Mm-hmm.
who was I just thinking? Ewing. Like all those guys have at least played in a Finals, right? They
Right.
at least made it there for a chance. Like Dame's never made it past the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
And I think at some point you have to think to yourself and say, what's more important to me for my legacy? Do I want a shot at trying to win a championship, or do I want my career to go out and say, hey, I was able to say I was loyal to one team, the team that drafted me, and I gave that team everything I had, and this is what I ended up with.
Yeah.
And I feel like at this point, he's 32. You know, he's given Portland literally his blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely.
I don't think he owes Portland anything else from here on out.
Not at all.
So if Portland can't say to him, next year we are going to build a contender around you, I think Portland says, hey, we need to trade you to a place where you can contend and potentially win a championship. And that's how I feel like it should go.
Yeah. This is kind of a twisted one for me too, because I'm a Pacers fan, man. Reggie Miller gave everything he had to the Pacers. And I think that, if he goes to another team possibly, or if he gets, if he's, going after a ring, Reggie Miller was good enough to be an NBA champion. But he chose loyalty and staying with the Pacers, which I'm of course I'm forever grateful for being a Pacers fan. But he chose that knowing that he was going to have to run into Michael Jordan every year. I mean, knowing that he'd have to beat those Knicks every year, and he stayed. So I think there's something about the competitive nature of guys like Damian Lillard, guys like Reggie Miller, where they're loyal to the franchise. But you see so many guys leave and do other things. So that was, I was thinking about that, thinking about all the things that he's been able to do, game-winning shots, all the 50-point plus games, scoring 71, and not even getting a sniff at the finals. When does that become, and, I'm not saying that winning championships isn't important to him now, but he knows he has a team in Portland that cannot win. He's not gonna beat the top 5 teams in the West. Their team is struggling to get into a playoff spot. Now, granted, they're in the same spot as most of the teams there. I mean, they're all within 3 or 4 games of each other. But he knows that team is not finals built. So, when does a guy like that say, and he may never, he may just be like, man, I'm going to ride it out, which he said that before. But yeah, I was just thinking about that just because he's so good and he's so talented and he's given so much to Portland. When does it become, man, when does he start being selfish?
And again, Reggie Miller was another one of those guys who also made it to a finals, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, he was the guy that ran into that first Lakers three-peat.
Yeah, that team was, incredible.
And a side note real quick, Dame Lillard is also third all-time in 60-point games.
Ooh, how many of those does he have?
5. He's one behind Kobe for second.
And then Wilt, of course.
And then Wilt's got 32.
That's what I was thinking of. Wilt's got 32 60-point games. That's what it was. So, yeah. So, that's crazy. So, we're talking about teams and streaks. Has anybody noticed the Milwaukee Bucks have won 14 straight? Everybody thought Boston had it in the bag. I know we talked about this last week, that we thought Boston was going to win the title. It hurt it hurt producer Tim's heart. He was like, man, I got to say it, but I think the Boston Celtics are the team to beat. Whoa, 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 whoa. Giannis Antetokounmpo and the boys said, hold on. Don't forget about us. 14 straight for the Bucks. I know
fear the deer, man.
Right. And I know Giannis is battling a wrist injury. But this team's playing really well. Outside of Boston, Boston's 8-2 in their last 10. Of course, Milwaukee's 10-0 in their last 10. But the Bucks are coming on strong, man. They are not ready. They're not ready to relinquish their top as one of their spots as the top teams in the East. So knowing that team and knowing that Boston team, I'm really looking forward to hopefully those two teams being able to battle in a 7-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals. But we do have the question mark of Giannis's health. I know he's battling a wrist injury, and I know that he's kind of been in and out. So, Josh, how long do you think this Bucks team can sustain this run? And do you think it's putting pressure on the Celtics? Or do you think they just like Celtics feel like they're just the team to beat?
Well, if I'm looking at this properly, which I think I am, so their last loss was to the Cavaliers back on the 21st of January.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, they have beat the Bucks, or the Bucks have beat the Nuggets, the Pelicans. I'm talking about teams that are trying to get in the playoffs. The Clippers, the Heat, the Lakers, the Clippers again, the Celtics, Bulls, Heat, and they beat the Suns last night. Now, a lot of this is being done without Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is scary.
My thing is that, and then they play the Nets on Tuesday, who is spiraling down out of control since the trade. So after that, they go Nets, Magic, and then they play the 76ers. So this streak could go 17 games before they end up losing. If they get Giannis back in that game going against the Sixers, it's at home, and they win that game, all of a sudden it's Wizards, Magic, Nets before they play the Warriors and the Kings and the Suns in that little stretch. So I've always said that, you look at some of these teams and you look at them, how they're playing going into the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember last year, Boston, second half of the season, they went on that run, where they were the best team in basketball, and then they just blew through the playoffs. I mean,
yeah.
They was like on a revenge tour. They're like, we're beating everybody to beat us, and made it to the finals. There's nothing more that I would want to see than a Bucks Celtics playoff series.
Yeah.
I feel like they're the two best teams that match. The Bucks, when they're healthy, I think we've always said they're the best team in the East. A lot of that has to do with Giannis. When they get Middleton rolling and they get Holiday rolling, like they're just a really hard team, to defend. They made a couple of small little pickups that I think is going to help them. I think people don't realize Joe Ingles is there. Back when he was with Utah, like baller. They picked up Jay Crowder. You got yourself an enforcer, a guy who's been in the playoffs a really long time. He knows how to play some of those high-end games. They've been getting so much out of Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, even Grayson Allen has been playing kind of lights out. Pat Connaughton, like their lineup is pretty much set. And then you look at guys like Javon Carter when Drew Holiday was out. Like this guy's been putting on a show. So like I feel like now they've kind of built themselves a team to where they got their rotation and they got their roster set that says, hey, we feel like we can compete with anybody in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know Bobby Portis missed some minutes and some games. He was injured early, but getting him back is going to help. Jay Crowder, like you said, he's always been one of those guys. He's kind of a Pat Bev guy without the attitude, I guess. He just plays defense. He does what he's supposed to do. He gives you quality minutes, can hit a shot from time to time. So they've got a roster there. I think that they like, and that I think there's four teams in the East. Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, and Cleveland are going to battle it out here till the end. And Milwaukee has just been on fire. So that's to watch that come down to the wire here these last 20 or so games is going to be interesting for the Eastern Conference. So staying in the Eastern Conference, I wanted to ask you about Atlanta and the firing of Nate McMillan. We've kind of watched this kind of all unfold. Nate McMillan was the interim for a while, I believe last year or the year before, got him into the playoffs. They made that run in the playoffs. And then they came back this year, and kind of all of that changed. There was issues in the locker room. There was issues on the floor. Trae Young was not happy. Then you had the GM, who's the GM and the owner are beefing because one of them likes Nate McMillan. The GM liked Nate McMillan, but the owner didn't like Nate McMillan, so they got rid of Nate McMillan. And now they're back to square one.
So for me, there's the only thing I can look at, right? So Joe Prunty's their interim right now, and I guess they're kind of on the fence with looking at potentially hiring Quinn Snyder.
Yes, I did
to take over. And for everybody that doesn't know, like how great of a job he did when he was in Utah. But this is what I see. Nate McMillan was 29-30 as the coach. Joe Prunty's 2-0.
Yeah.
I'm not in the front office. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not behind closed doors. So I don't know what mess was actually going on that we didn't see. But clearly it got to the point where they felt like he was losing control of the team. Getting DeJounte Murray over there, I felt like they thought that was a step up, moving in the right direction, trying to contend with some of these teams in the East, and they were pretty much sitting right where they were last year, right?
Right.
So now, like I said, you now have Joe Prunty who's taken over, and granted, the two games that you've played, I mean, one was Brooklyn, but you beat Cleveland. You know what I'm saying? And that's a tall task to say right there. You beat Cleveland. We're all high on Cleveland. We all think Cleveland can contend.
Right.
So
yeah.
The game before that, where Nate McMillan got fired, they got blown out by the Knicks. They lost to Charlotte, and they beat the Spurs. I mean, everybody's beating the Spurs right now. I think the Spurs and the Bucks are like on opposite spectrums of the win streak, lose streak. Like, I think Bucks are at 14, Spurs are at like 17.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Spurs are lost 16 straight.
That's what I say. They're 16, 17 straight. So everybody's out here trying to be like, we want the Spurs. You know what I'm saying? You want to get right? He'll give us the Spurs. Let us fix what's going wrong.
My man Pop down there is struggling.
But it's a lot different than a team like Golden State who just won a championship. We've seen guys in and out of the lineup. We've seen Curry get hurt. We've seen Wiggins get hurt. Draymond was hurt. They're trying to play some new guys. So, like, you don't look at Steve Kerr and say, well, you just won a championship last year. Like, you're struggling this year. Like, what the heck's going on? Like, we might have to potentially think about replacing you. This is different. This is, hey, we thought you guys were taking a step up last year when you had made the playoffs. Now we feel like we got you another piece to make your team better, and yet we've taken a step back.
Yeah. So Nate McMillan came in It was the 2020-21 season. That's what it was. And he finished the season 27-11 and got him to the Eastern Conference Finals. So then the following year, they made the playoffs again. I think his overall record was 72-69. But the biggest complaint I think about him was that they felt like he was not able to relate to those guys. So I have a real issue, and I was reading I was watching a clip from the coach from the Rockets, the young Silas kid, and he was just talking about being honest with players. And Dame Lillard torched them for 71 last night, and he sat a guy, one of their players, for the end of the third and all of the fourth because he just wasn't doing what he was coached to do. Jason Kidd, in an interview after the Lakers made that 28-point comeback, was calling his team. He said they got to grow up, they got to change their mindset. They got to stop being he had not really derogatory, but like these coaches are starting to speak up to these players, and it's starting to become more and more of a speaking point as the coaches are starting to challenge the players. So there are some teams that like it and some teams that don't, and you got to see how they respond. I believe that's kind of what happened in Atlanta. I think Nate McMillan started to challenge those guys a little bit. You see with some of your younger stars, like they don't like that. And I think that's where the messaging got lost. Like Nate McMillan is a guy that he's a traditionalist. He's a guy that preaches defense. He's a guy that wants to play basketball the right way. And I think sometimes that messaging gets lost with some of those younger players. You've got DeJounte Murray, you've got Trae Young, you've got some young talent down there. And maybe it was just a messaging thing. I'm not really sure. But I know that there was inner conflict as well between the owner and the GM. Like those two, they have some contention between them as well. So that Atlanta franchise is definitely interesting to me.
So what do you think the difference is? Like, if I'm not mistaken, and I know this isn't a huge win, but wasn't McMillan the coach for your Pacers back in? And I'm pretty sure I went to one of these playoff games back in 17, 18, and they played Cleveland in the first round and took them 7 games.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I really thought they had a chance to win that series, and they knocked Cleveland out of the playoffs. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember how that 7th game ended, but for the most part, I was like, man, like McMillan's got these boys playing. And he was there. I don't remember how long he was the coach there. It was like 3 or 4 years, but every year I'm pretty sure he made the playoffs. Now, I think he got knocked out the first round every year. But, I mean, that was back when you guys had Victor Oladipo, and Victor was like on his game. And, Thaddeus Young, and you had Bogdanovich, who was guarding LeBron that series. And you had Miles Turner was young, Collison, and all the Sabonis, like Lance, like that team was tough, man. Yeah. And I just remember them almost beating Cleveland. And because that year is when Cleveland played Golden State in the finals. And I'm like, man, I think Indiana was just as good as they were. They just ran short. And what do you think is the difference as a guy that can take a team like that, right, and push those guys against a team that is arguably one of the best teams in basketball? Yeah. And they had some young guys on that team. I mean, Victor was only in like his 3rd or 4th year. Bogdanovich was only in his 3rd year. You had some rookies on that team like TJ Leaf. I think Lance was really considered a vet at that time. I think he was in the league like 7-8 years. And then I think you had like Al Jefferson, maybe, who would have been like a longtime vet. But I get it. Like, none of those guys were really like true superstars, like what they consider Trae Young. Yeah. But at the same time, like those guys bought into what Nate McMillan was selling. So what is it that you think that's different in Atlanta that's causing all of the chaos that got him fired? Do you just think it's just the change of the game, that these guys are younger, they're coming in, they feel like they're owed the world, and they're just like, look, I'm a grown man, you ain't gonna talk to me like that.
I think that's part of it, and I think part of it too is ownership. I think the owners, I think sometimes they side with the players more than the coaches, because of course players, coaches do scheme, players win games. So if you got a guy like Trae Young and he's not happy, Trae Young is going to win you more basketball games than Nate McMillan. So I think that's what it kind of comes down to. When you have ownerships and GMs that they give, the players have a lot of power. So if you've seen this with LeBron. I mean, like LeBron had a coach that won the championship and they got him removed the next year. So I mean,
I forgot,
see it all the time. Like if those guys aren't happy, man, it is a cutthroat league. And so if your stars aren't happy, and the owners know that the players win games, it's curtains. It's curtains. Those coaches really have no say or power. The only ones that have it are like your Popoviches, your Phil Jacksons, like those guys that have longevity. I think Budenholzer's getting that way. Now, I wouldn't say Giannis is not that type of player, but I would say if Giannis was like, man, I don't like this guy anymore, like best believe, like they would move Budenholzer out. Like even though as much as they like him, because they're not going to run the risk of having an unhappy Giannis. So I think that players have so much power as far as superstar status and the things that they're able to do and accomplish, that it puts ownerships and coaches and GMs in a bad way, because truth be told, like if they don't like it, they can force a trade, they can make a move, they can do all these different things. I mean, we've seen it. So I think that the players have so much power that it almost makes the ownership and GMs kind of obsolete.
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, Nate.
Right. And I like Nate McMillan. You know what I mean? He's a pacer dude. Like I like Nate McMillan. I like his style. And I like the way he's a hard-nosed old school coach. He's a NBA veteran himself. I liked him when he was the Pacers coach. We just couldn't get over the hump with him, and I get it, but yeah, I was definitely a big Nate McMillan fan. I like Nate McMillan a lot. So,
well, speaking of Atlanta, they are right now sitting in the 8th spot, and just to kind of fill you in on kind of how things are changing right now is, I look at teams on their last 10. Obviously, Milwaukee's undefeated. They're 14 in a row, but Boston's 8-2. Philly and Cleveland are 7-3. The Knicks are 8-2 in their last 10. And Toronto is 7-3, and they're slowly moving up. Which is a team I told you that they got their act together. That's going to be a scary team at the end of the season.
Well, yeah.
All they got to do is make it in the play-in, and they're already there.
Yeah, you're right. And Pascal Siakam might be the hottest player on the planet right now. I mean, he's playing incredible basketball, and he has all year.
If Brooklyn don't watch it, they're sitting in the 5 seed right now, but they are 3-7 in their last 10. Miami's 4-6. Those could be the two teams that end up finding themselves out if they don't fix it. And obviously, Brooklyn's a whole different ball club right now with the amount of trades that just happened. But I still think they got enough quality players to hold this off till the end of the season. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll slide some just because I think that the East is going to be better. Like you said, you brought up a good point. Toronto's playing better. I think Atlanta's going to play better. The one I'm really worried about is Miami. Like, they've lost their last 4. and they're not playing very well at all. So I think that's the one I'm concerned about sliding the most. I really don't have a whole lot of faith. The Wizards are there, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in them. The Pacers.
Who y'all need to be watching out for is them Chicago Bulls, baby. 2-0 since that Pat Bev trade.
Hey, it's the Pat Bev effect, baby. I'm telling you. The Pat Bev effect is real. People don't understand that.
Everywhere he goes, playoffs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He refuses. He is not going to let them not make the playoffs. So, but yeah, you're going to have these last couple games, these last 20 or so games, where you're going to see some teams move up, some move down. I like Brooklyn. I mean, I like Brooklyn, but I just don't think that their roster is sustainable to stay where they are. I think they'll still make the playoffs, but they'll slide a little bit. But that'll give. I think the Knicks are going to make a move. I think Toronto's going to make a move. I think Atlanta will play better. So, I think that the East is. Outside of your top four, the East is going to shake up a lot here in these next, 18 to 20 games.
While we're talking about this, and I'm going to switch over to the West for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the last 10s of the West. So you have Denver at 7-3. You're the 1 seed. Been playing some good basketball. Then you go Memphis, 5-5. Sacramento, 6-4. Phoenix, 6-4. Clippers, 5-5. Dallas, 5-5. Golden State 5-5, Utah 5-5, Minnesota 4-6, New Orleans 4-6, Portland 5-5, Lakers 6-4, OKC 5-5.
That's wild.
That's the West, and
the Lakers technically are the hottest team in the West right now.
and we're wondering why ain't nobody get no separation in the West.
Right. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's
crazy. Talk about some parity.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
My Lord.
That Sacramento team, I didn't think they'd be able to hold on, but man, they've
held on right now.
Yeah, they are, man. Like the beam, man. Shout out my man Richard Ivanovsky out there in Sacramento. They're playing some good basketball.
Hey, remember last year when I was upset when Sabonis didn't make the All-Star game? And we were talking, and I was like, hey, this guy deserves to be on the All-Star team every year. And I'm so glad that he went out west. Sometimes I feel like it's harder to make it on the All-Star team out west sometimes as it being like a big because of how you got to go through. But he definitely went out there and did his thing, man.
Yeah, he played well. He played really well. So, but yeah, man, that's all I've got. It's been a lot of fun, man, chopping it up with you here on the pod. If you guys think about it, whatever you listen to, whatever podcast subscriber you listen to, please give us a 5-star review. You can check us out. Like I said, we still are covering all your local college, NKU, Xavier, UC, Miami. We've got great photog people. Shout out Ryan Luster. Shout out Mr. 24, Kentucky 24, Trey Grayson. All those dudes are covering games. Shout out Parker Fields. The At-Large Bid crew is covering college basketball. We are 2 weeks away from Selection Sunday. The At-Large Bid crew is going to be all over it, so make sure you check those guys out. Like and subscribe the pod. We love doing it. We love covering basketball. Also, you can go, if you want to buy some 48 Minutes gear, you can go to 48minutes.merchmake.com, and you can get the merch. You can follow us on all the socials at 48 Minutes NTWRK. We'll be all over, like I said, college basketball, NBA basketball. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So make sure, and Facebook. We got them all covered. So make sure you check us out. For myself and Joshua Odellis Ferellis Hayes, we are signing off. You guys have a good evening.
Sayonara.